Hi, you're listening to The Sociology Show, a podcast about absolutely anything to do with the wonderful world of sociology. Whether you're a teacher, a lecturer, a student, or just taking a passing interest, this podcast will look at a range of issues from social class, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, religion, crime, education, and anything else that sociology has to offer. My name is Matthew Wilkin, and each episode I will speak to someone working in the field of sociology and let them explain all about their own interests, their research, and their experiences. So, put your earphones in, turn the volume up, and let's be sociology geeks together, eh? Hello and welcome to The Sociology Show. The Sociology Show podcast is brought to you in association with Tutor2U Sociology, the exam performance specialist for A-level and GCSE sociology students and teachers. And so you can visit their website, which is at tutor2u.net/sociology. And once you're on there, you can pick up revision guides, flashcards, revision videos, and everything else that you need for your A-level or GCSE sociology studies. And so my guest for this episode is Judith Charpentier. I first came across Judith on Twitter, where she was having quite heated debates and arguments with a number of different feminists and different people within the world of sociology as well. And I thought Judith would make an absolutely fantastic guest for the show. And the reason I thought that is Judith criticises feminism. And I've had lots and lots of people on my show who are pro-feminism and from different branches of feminism. And I thought perhaps we should hear a critique of feminism then. One of the main issues that Judith has is that feminism claims to focus on gender equality, but she believes it actually only ever really focuses on the concerns of women and pretty much ignores the concerns that men have. Judith also questions whether we really do live in a patriarchy today in the Western world. Or does feminism overemphasize the extent to which patriarchy is damaging for women, or perhaps it doesn't even consider the damage that it does to men as well? And Judith also calls out what she calls hypocrisy or double standards, in that feminism often claims that you should never judge people based on their sex or to stereotype them, but they do exactly that to men through the process of misandry. So the reason I really wanted to get Judith on was I think this will start lots of discussions. I think this will start lots of debates. Perhaps you could listen to it in the classroom. Something for discussion, like I say, in your classrooms or lecture theatres. Really good way to kind of get those arguments going. We've heard a lot of pro-feminism. How about a critique of feminism just to balance the argument? So I hope you enjoy this one. Over to the interview with Judith Charpentier. And so my guest for this episode is Judith Charpentier. I've probably pronounced that badly. I'll get Judith to explain it exactly in a moment. Judith, help me out here. Tell me how to pronounce your name properly.
It's Charpentier. It means carpenter in English.
Brilliant. Thank you. And tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, Judith.
My name is Judith. I'm a Twitter personality, I guess we could say. It's actually the third year today that I started tweeting about feminism on Twitter, and I'm up to 13,500 people following me, which I think it's a bit incredible that so many people see something important in what I'm saying. So I guess that's why I'm here today. You're one of those people. Yeah,
it's incredible. When did it kind of really snowball? When did you start getting a huge number of followers?
I'm going to say right from the get-go. From the get-go, I started like at 1, but it continued. It always went up, always. Less than a year. I think it took 8 months to reach 1,000, and it just snowballed from there. It keep going up, and I don't understand why, because there's so many women, especially women, talking about feminism and anti-feminism online, and I really don't understand why my perspective seems to be so in demand, I could say.
That's good. That's great. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. The reason why I wanted to get you on the show, being a sociology show, I interview a lot of people within the world of feminism, all different types of feminism, from liberal, radical, Marxist feminism. And something I'm really aware of is becoming a bit of an echo chamber. And I thought it was really important to see things from the other side and have a bit of a critique of feminism as well. The first thing I was intrigued to know is how you define yourself politically. I mean, do you see yourself as a egalitarian or a gender equalitist or a humanist? How do you define yourself, Judith?
The big word I would use is egalitarian, because my focus is on the belief in equality, which I think is really important. And I think the society I was raised in is very egalitarian, and that's because of feminism. It had a huge impact on my society. And for me, the belief in equality is really important, but the way feminism goes at it, it's all wrong and crooked and discriminatory sometimes. But the belief is important. It helps society in many ways, avoiding discrimination, having more fairness, more justice. But when your mentality send you down a path where you discriminate against people while still holding that belief of equality is important and all that, that makes no sense to me. And for me, that's where my criticism of feminism comes from.
So let's start from the very basics then, because obviously what people would say is that that feminism is about gender equality. But your view, you don't agree with that, basically, do you?
No, yeah, I agree that's what they say, but when you look at their actions, there's so many times again and again, you'll see that that's not true at all. When you see a university, I think it was in Denmark or Switzerland, and one of those Nordic countries that are very feminist, they open a job function at a university and they deny access to that function to males. Because they want to boost, they say they want to boost equality, they want to have more 50% male and female, but what you're doing is discriminating against a gender entirely. And you're the one who's saying, no, we're pro-equality, we want equality. Well, why aren't you treating men equally to women then?
I mean, that's one of the issues that I've always thought myself. I mean, I won't name the person, but there's a popular person on Twitter who claims to be a feminist, who says you should never judge anyone based on their sex or gender. That sounds good. And then they distribute badges with things like boys are gross on them. And women do it better. And I just think, how is that gender equality? I'm not quite sure how that fits in with the line of argument.
Exactly. For me, a lot of it comes down to, women used to be very dependent on men, the way the society was established. And we're talking more like 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, when women didn't even have bank accounts and things like that. They were very dependent on men. But then they discovered independence, which was better than being dependent on a man. And sometimes the man was not really reliable, alcoholism, addiction, and all that, whatever you want to label you want to put on a man. But then they discover independence, and then they're stuck in this phase. And instead of going beyond independence to interdependence, where you know that we all need to rely on each other, we're all part of the human race, and we need to help each other out, they're stuck at this independence. We don't need men. Men are gross. We don't want nothing to do with it. And that's where I have a huge problem with the feminism, this rejection of the masculinity, this rejection of interdependence. It stops people, especially women, from growing and maturing, and it binds them in this very small carcan of, ideology. You can't grow from an ideology. You need to be stuck in it, or otherwise you'll be rejected. And that's what they need to grow from. They need to grow from feminism. And I'm a huge advocate of that. I think that we need to grow away from feminism. And maybe that's easier for me to say, coming from a very egalitarian society, that this is the basis. We have equality. Let's go forward from that. Leave feminism behind because it's very restrictive, and grow from that. Let's progress.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up on 2 points that you just said in terms of, I can kind of picture what the counter arguments would be to that. So firstly, say that we don't live in an equal society, that we're still a long way away from gender equality between men and women. So what do you say to that as a starting point?
I'd say a lot of feminists do not see the equality that's right in front of their eyes. A lot of, they'll look at countries like Saudi Arabia and say, oh, we don't have equality. Well, if you look at an equal society, of course you won't see any equality. But if you look at most countries of the Commonwealth, most Nordic country, most European country, men and women have equal rights, and most time women actually have more right if you count reproductive right or anything that's related to genital integrity. Men, they're still being circumcised, while women, it's completely legal to circumcise a woman. So it's all about perspective. You need to look at the fact and not look at what feminism is telling you that's happening, because it's screwing up with your perspective.
I was going to say the other thing that I was interested in is, you've just highlighted that some aspects of feminism, not all, but some aspects of feminism are highly critical of men. And of course, the argument that I keep on seeing at the moment is you can't be sexist towards a man.
Yeah.
But based on the definition of what sexism means, you can be sexist towards a man, can't you? Would you say you can?
Well, of course you can. Anybody that's got a sex or a gender can be discriminated against. That's really like a black person saying, oh, you can't be sexist toward, you can't be racist toward a white person. Of course you can. I'm a race. I'm a gender. Anybody can be sexist or racist toward any gender. Because if you say you can't be racist toward white people, does that mean like any other, like, can a Chinese person be racist towards a Japanese person? Of course, they have a long history of racism toward each other. So being white has nothing to do with it, just like being a man has nothing to do with it. For me, it's just become an excuse to become sexist towards somebody. No, you can't be sexist toward a man. Yes, you can. You just were. Grow a bit, like.
But that's the thing that worries me, because if you take sexism as only a one-way process, that kind of gives freedom to say whatever you want. Because I've even seen some arguments that say misandry doesn't exist, but if you take the definition of what misandry means, it quite clearly exists.
Of course, for me, it's always come down to that person not wanting to be viewed as sexist. So they'll just, no, it doesn't exist. I'm not being that person right now. Yes, you are. You are.
So if we could take, Judith, what would be your main critiques of feminism? If I was to try and get you to sort of summarize what the main critiques of particularly the current feminist movement, what would they be?
For me, it's the lies and the lack of integrity. The lack of integrity comes down to what we're talking about, saying equality is important, but then they go on and discriminate against men. And the lies, because that's sort of the first thing I noticed when I really started looking at feminism from a critical eyes. It's all the lies. They tell you men are evil, men are patriarchal, women are weak, women are this and that, men are this and that. There's so many lies. We live in a rape culture. You're gonna get attacked if you go out at night. There's so much lies that they are telling men and women, and it's all in order to keep feminism from existing. The goal of feminism is to make people scared, so that these scared people keep turning to feminism to give them all of the answer they're looking for and all the reassurance they need. And I can't stand for liars and people with a lack of integrity.
I've seen that argument a lot, that actually it kind of keeps women as victims, doesn't it? That if you keep on perpetrating some statistics that are basically are scaring females, then it keeps them as victims and actually suppresses them rather than pushes them up.
Exactly. They don't want women who, well, of course, I speak in generalities here, but the whole of the movement don't want women to be so confident that they don't need feminism anymore, because then feminist organizations don't get funded. They don't have anybody to help all of these independent, strong, and confident women. They won't turn to feminism. So it's a self-serving, self-replicating movement. We always need to make women scared, otherwise feminism is useless. And that in itself is very there's a corrupted idea at the core of all this that I just can't stand.
Would you say, though, Judith, that feminism is still required in certain parts of the world? Are you, where you say we have got more equality, are you just specifically talking about the Western world there?
Well, usually when I speak of feminism, I'm talking about the Western world.
Yeah.
Of course, if you look at countries, let's say like Saudi Arabia, do they need feminism? I'm not sure that feminism is the solution more than just give them basic human rights, because it's not just women there that have it rough. there's many men that have it rough too, especially like the gay community. Like you can, I think it's one of those countries you can still get killed or put in jail for being gay. So it's not like all of the men there have it like hanky dory and rainbows and cookies. No, it's very regressive, very restricted types of country, and they need human rights beyond anything else that they need.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for the Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.
You're living in Canada, is that right?
Yeah, on the province of Quebec, yes.
So if I was to put to you, do you believe that where you're living at the moment, do you think you live in a patriarchal society?
Absolutely not. Considering that our prime minister is a feminist, I don't see how the whole system is patriarchal. And especially too that when he got into power, he made his cabinet 50% women, 50% men. Like, we're not in any way patriarchal. Women just have all the same access to the same job, the same opportunities. They can go to university, do whatever job they want. There's no restriction on what women can do. For me, is the first sign of a patriarchal country. So we're free to do whatever we want, just like men are.
So obviously a lot of people would criticize that. They would say there's huge evidence that there's gender inequality. So what do you say against that? Because a lot of people would say, well, if you look at the power, I'm assuming a large number of people in top positions in Canada are still men. I assume there's still a wage gap difference and so on as well. So what would you say to those arguments?
There's a huge denial of the way biology works and the human mind, the human psyche, personalities. I'm a huge fan, Jordan Peterson, and he explained the way human personality works very well. And there's huge difference in personality between male and female. And male tend to be more conscientious. And when you're more conscientious, you're looking for more responsibilities. And those CEOs and those high-ranking politicians and all that, they have high degrees of conscientiousness that women don't necessarily have. So, of course, you're going to see men in those positions a lot more than you see women. And there's also a sociological factor that men are still expected to be the provider in society, provider of women. They need to provide for themselves, for their wife, for their children. Women are just expected to we have no expectation on women nowadays. There is on men. So men have a lot bigger focus on money and making it in the world and being successful that women do. Because if you look at the CEO of the company, might be flirting with the cute secretary and end up dating her and marrying her. But if you have a female CEO, she won't look at the desk clerk at the bottom of the hierarchy. She will look at other CEO or high-ranking member for marriage or mate or whatever. So there's more impetus on men to be high-ranking than there is on women. And the feminists they do not look at these facts at all. All they see is men higher in position. They believe in the patriarchy, so they make 1 and 1 plus equals 2, so that's it. They don't look any further into the details of the situation and all the facts that you need to have a concrete image, a concrete real life image of what's actually happening. All they see is their ideology.
I think Jordan Peterson noticed that in some countries, somewhere like Sweden, that the more gender equality you have, actually the gaps get bigger, because if you offer anyone can do any job, actually men and women make different choices. So you still end up with a gender gap, and actually it widens.
Exactly. The more you give people liberty to go outside their gender preferences or the gender norm, the more people go back to it. So you tell women to do whatever you want. They choose to stay home with their kid, to become teacher, to become psychologist. You tell men to do the same thing, do what you want. They go into engineering or construction, and they won't cross that that ideological barrier that feminists have created, that they think it's just each of us in society that forces us into these little labels of men and women. No, there's a natural element that they're not looking at. Yeah, you're right. If you leave people their preferences, they will choose what's traditional to women or traditional to men. That's just how it is.
Yeah, I saw something that a lot of men go for jobs because of the pay. They're attracted by the pay. And a lot of women often go for jobs that would give them satisfaction. So they might be helping other people, something like a counselor or social worker, which are often lower paid jobs, but actually give them higher job satisfaction.
Yeah.
And actually, if you look long term, men are more likely to die early, because they work themselves into the ground, whereas women have taken a job on lower pay but much higher job satisfaction.
If you look at the gender pay gap in certain profession, you look at nursing. Even when male go into nursing, they wind up making more money because they go for specialities and they're studied very specific detail of nursing that women won't necessarily do because they want that work-life balance. So they're just do your general practice nurse and then go back to their family, while male will go and take specific course to be a specific kind of nurse and they make a little bit more money. Yeah, that's how it goes actually.
So are we basically overanalyzing things too much? Are we basically saying that, men and women are different biologically and we should sort of let that be? That, true equality, gender equality probably is impossible.
It is impossible. We would be talking about a utopia, and that's impossible. I think it was Aristotle that says the more you try to make equality happen, the more inequalities happen. So it's a very important concept, like we're talking at the beginning, to make sure things are more balanced, that resources are distributed more equally. Because if you go back to, like, let's say 10,000 years ago, even more, when we're hunter and gatherer, well, if you had somebody, like, let's say born with just one leg, that person would die in nature, not being able to hunt or forage all that much. So other people had to take care of that person. And when the hunter came back with the food, they would give a small portion to that person, because we're still all human beings. And because we're all on that same plane, where all should be equal. So even if one person can have access to a lot more resources, then that person is going to survive. But what about that other person who cannot survive on their own? We need to redistribute things a bit more equally to everyone. And that's, for me, that's the basis of equality, to make sure everyone has enough. But of course, it should never be made law. It's more like a non-written rule to that comes out of human kindness and human good, that we should make sure that our neighbor has enough too.
Because, that goes to that discussion about the difference between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome, doesn't it? Because actually, if you say that no matter what your gender, you can all do the same jobs, or you have the opportunity to go to the same universities, do the same jobs and so on, that doesn't mean we're going to end up with a society of equal pay and equal positions, does it?
No, absolutely not. We wind up with a society that discriminates based on gender and race and all that. Because when are we going to stop that? Okay, you have a company that hire mostly male. Okay, we're gonna hire women now, more women. We need more women. Okay, but turns out we don't have a lot of gay people too, so let's hire gay people. We don't have a lot of Muslim. Let's hire some Muslim. We don't have a lot of handicapped people. Let's hire more handicapped people. Like, where does it stop? Or should it stop? Shouldn't it stop? Like, it becomes ridiculous, and it becomes more about identity than actually the job you're supposed to be doing when you're hired at this position. So who do you want to hire? Like, the best person for the job, or the person that fits the color and gender and all that?
But the other thing that I'm interested to do with jobs, which I think sometimes this has been brought up that feminism doesn't look into, is that sometimes feminism says we need more women at the top, we need more CEOs, we need more women running businesses and companies and so on. But they often don't look at the other end, in terms of men doing dangerous jobs. Like, well, if you want true equality, we need more women to work down sewers and on oil rigs and, and dangerous construction and so on. Do you think that is true, that sometimes it's a bit sort of there's a bias to it. It only looks one way and not the other.
There's a huge bias. It's all about giving women the cushy position that they want, and ignoring that men are doing all the dangerous stuff, because who cares about men? Feminism is not about men at all. It's all about giving women power through this idea that they have, that equality means that no matter where you go, there should be 50% women, 50% men, completely negating what we were talking earlier about biology and human, psychology. No, you won't ever have 50% nursing male. That's not going to happen. But women want this, better give women what they want, or they'll just keep complaining, I guess.
So that kind of comes on to the main issue. This is where I found you on Twitter, actually, Judith, because I was involved in a discussion to do with gender equality, and what I found was, if I tried to raise a point from a male point of view, the reaction I got was mansplaining. Trying to shut it down. You can't join the discussion. It's got nothing to do with you. You're mansplaining. And I felt that was a way of shutting myself down. And I know if you're a female trying to defend it like you are, you get accused of being called a pick-me.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we could just explore those. I mean, for me, to judge someone and to try and shut them down by saying mansplaining is a sexist term, because you're judging that person purely based on their sex.
Exactly. That's the discrimination that comes with feminism. That's simply what it is. You're a male, you shouldn't have, because you'll have an opposing view. But how can your view be correct if you don't have the right gender to be able to objectively look at the problem? No. Go ahead.
I just thought that if feminism is truly about the discussion of gender equality, then surely everyone's invited, would have been my theory. And then for those that haven't heard that expression, you've been accused of being a pick-me. Do you just want to explain what we mean by that?
Pick-me means that if you're not a feminist and you're pro-man, you're just being pro-man because you want a man to choose you, to pick you. It's all about wanting male attention and wanting male approval. That's what they think it's happening. It's really diminishing of women's opinion. Like, it's reducing female agency to think for themselves, to, you're just after dicks, that's all you want. Like, no, I'm a thinker too. I have my opinions too. It's not just about men all the time.
And what do you think that's about, Judith? Because, many people feel shut out of discussions on gender equality because they are shut down. They're accused of being a sexist or a mansplainer or a pick-me. Do you think that's just a defense mechanism to keep out anyone that's going against the narrative?
That's exactly what it is. It's the group trying to preserve itself. It's the thinking that's linking all the members of the group. That's why I'm not a huge fan of group. I've always seen myself more of an outsider. I look at group dynamic from the outside, and all groups all the same. They all have to think the same, to have the same mentality. And even when I say think the same, because among feminists, there's very different types of feminists that do not get along with each other at all. Like the choice feminists and the radical feminists do not like each other at all. But to be a radical feminist, you have to have certain characteristics. To be a choice feminist, you have to have certain characteristics. And if you don't fit those, then out the group you go. So it's preserving in-group bias. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I was involved in a discussion the other day where the argument was very much about whether men should be involved or not. And you had some feminists saying that, of course, men should be part of the discussion because it's about gender equality. And other feminists saying, no, this is about women's rights and movement. Men should have no part of it. So it becomes really confusing when you get those sort of fractions.
And there's not a lot of those feminists who think men should be part of the conversation. I call those the progressive feminists, who are I think they're the one who have noticed people like me, anti-feminists, who have been criticizing the movement for years, and they're starting to adapt themselves. Like, maybe we're wrong to kick men out and not let them have an opinion about this. Maybe if it's about gender equality, men are a gender, maybe they should have they should be part of the conversation, and of course they should be part. If they're not part of the conversation, you're just discriminating against them for being male, and that's completely against the concept of equality.
I would have thought so, yeah. And taking that to one step further, I mean, probably one of the biggest things that does concern me is some of the hashtags, men are trash, kill all men. And I've seen some people try to defend those, and I'm not quite sure, one, how you defend it, and two, how it really helps the gender equality movement at all.
It doesn't at all. For me, it's the same thing as a white person say, I'm not racist, but okay, you're going to say something racist. It's the same thing for me. Like, I'm not sexist against men, but they're the perpetrator of more violence. They're this, they're that, they rape. If you like men, you're not likely going to bring up all the toxic, evil, negative things that they do. You're going to talk about all the good they do to society, all the work they do, all the providing that they do. That's what liking men is all about, seeing them as human beings. And a lot of feminists ignore that completely.
Judith, if you don't mind, I just wanted to read out your pinned tweet, because I thought I could make this the last question, because this is something, if people do want to follow you on Twitter, if I just read out your pinned tweet, and I thought you might want to elaborate on it a little bit more. So you say, I'm not a feminist because I believe in equality. I think men and women have equal value in society. I'm not a feminist because I absolutely refuse to see men as problems to be fixed, as the main reason why society is messed up and women suffer. Men matter more than feminism. Quite powerful stuff. I thought you might want to elaborate and explain your pinned tweet a little bit more.
But for me, it's all about our shared humanity. Equality comes from the concept that we are all human and we all have value. If you immerse yourself into feminism, you'll see that that's not the way at all that they look at men. Like I was just saying, they'll see them as problem to be fixed. That's basically what patriarchy theory is. They'll see them as oppressors who have dominated women for thousands of years. They'll see them as patriarchal asshole who murdered their own partner because they're misogynist. Nothing in the feminist discourse is about all the good, all of the male heroes there is in society. None of that. Even the intellectuals and the scholars like Peterson's are pushed away from society, and they've been trying to cancel him for like 3 or 4 years now, and that's not happening. So yeah, it's about our humanity. If you want somebody to be on your side, especially somebody you think is toxic and you want them to change, you need to help them, not just berate them all the time and point at all their flaws. For me, feminism act a lot like the toxic girlfriends who's always nagging at the boyfriend. You need to change. You need to do this. You don't need to do that. And no guy wants to date a woman like that. They want to date a woman that's on their side. Like, if you want somebody to grow, you need to nurture them, not just pick at their flaws and nag at them constantly. And I think that feminism is doing a terrible job at showing us why humanity is important and why men, women, whatever labels you want to call yourself, we all have value and we're all very important.
So you say it comes down to respect, that there's not a respect for... Yeah. That
exactly.
makes sense. And do you think there's any aspects of feminism, you've already mentioned, say, progressive feminism or perhaps liberal feminism. Do you think there are some factions that are doing it right?
Not really.
Okay.
Sorry, but I've been doing this for a long time. Even before Twitter, I would be on forums and Facebook group and all that, looking at them. And this idea that the very nice progressive feminist who's open-minded and want to reach out to men, it's a fantasy. I have never met that feminist. Some feminists will slide more along the spectrum of more kind and open-minded, but they're never that. They're never the opposite of the angry, belligerent, annoying, overwhelming feminists. So that kind, sweet feminists who just want the world to be a better place, they don't exist. That's not what feminism is creating, and that's because of what they're teaching within the movement. That's because of like their idea of patriarchy theory that sees all men as a problem, that they're oppressing, they're evil, they're all that. You cannot see men as something good where that's not what they're teaching you within your group.
So, Judith, if I can make this the last question then. So, in a Judith world, if we were looking for a movement towards gender equality, what would replace feminism?
I think within society, the feminist movement, the way it is claws into political and social movements and all that, I think the idea is good. I think what they've done a lot of is improve the quality of life for a lot of people, especially women. And to fix the whole thing, I think the first thing we need to do is make everything gender neutral. It's not just women's movement. It's a movement for gender equality, let's call it. Let's remove all the women's shelter. Let's call them domestic violence shelter, victim shelter. We have absolutely no reason why things shouldn't be gender neutral. And the only reason is that feminists have been very, very good at making women the poor little victim in society that nobody wants to help, to take care of, when it's actually the opposite that's happening. You just look at Cancer Research Fund. There's as many men dying of prostate cancer than there is women dying of breast cancer, but breast cancer is funded way more than prostate cancer. And then the same feminists will go on to tell you that nobody cares about women. No, we need to make things a lot more gender neutral, help the victim that needs the help, and that way we'll stop a lot of this discrimination there is against men in society.
So would you call it the gender equality movement rather than the feminist movement? Would that go some way to sort of look at it from both sides, if you like?
I think that would be a better idea than just feminist movement, yes.
Thank you, Judith. I think this episode is going to spark up a lot of discussion, which is what I wanted to achieve. Because, as I said, to go back to what I said right at the start, I think it's really important to hear different views and critiques of different theories as well. I think that's really important. So, Judith, do you want to give out your details so people can add you on Twitter, or I know you've got a website and you're also on YouTube as well?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. I've got the links for all of my other websites, for my WordPress, my YouTube, my Facebook is on there. You can find me at Judith_Char, CHAR, and you'll see my 3 years worth of tweets, and come join the fun.
Yeah, please do. And, if you're looking for a good discussion, debates and arguments flying around left, right and centre on Twitter, Judith is a good page to start.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today, Judith. And I look forward to seeing the responses to the episode as well.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Cheers, Judith. Bye now.
Bye.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for The Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. If you would like to contact the show or be interviewed, then please email thesociologyshowpodcast@gmail.com.